I'm Haley Taylor, and you're listening to the Rough Draft Diaries. It's summertime, and we're taking you outdoors on this episode of the Rough Draft Diaries. We're headed to the park, a specific part of the park, the playground, where kids are running, jumping, skipping, and sliding. And I don't know if you do this, but every time I pass one, I remember my favorite jungle gym that I played on when I was younger, specifically the one we had at our elementary school. Maybe you're already picturing your favorite childhood memory on the playground, your favorite swing, or your favorite slide. But for some families, playgrounds never get the chance to become this happy memory. Instead, it's a reminder that their family is different. And sometimes those differences mean their kids feel left behind.
I think prior to this project getting started, there was absolutely a lot of frustration that this wasn't just already a standard part of a community. That when community parks design their playgrounds, that this group of children is often not thought of. They're often forgotten.
That's Jamie O'Brien, a physical therapist from Findlay, Ohio. She's talking about disabled children that she often works with in her program, children whose families she's been able to get to know, become friends with, and ultimately work alongside in this initiative to create a park that is inclusive for all children.
So this playground is kind of the passion project of Ryan and Kaylee Weekman. After they realized that their son Grant really couldn't use any of the playgrounds in our local community. I became involved when I saw that Ryan sent out a post kind of gauging interest and jumped in right away. And I've constantly seen how families are concerned that their child can't access a playground or that they can't play with their siblings in a typical way. And so as a group, we have an organization of, I'm a physical therapist, we have occupational therapists, speech therapists, a psychologist, a special needs preschool teacher, and parents of children with special needs who all came together to create a playground where we believe that everyone can play and that typical children can play alongside with children who have extra needs.
The park is called Wood County Plays and will be the first and only inclusive park in Perrysburg. But what does an inclusive park look like?
We sat down as a team and as an organization to really design something that was both accessible to children, let's say, that are using a wheelchair or a walker, but also met the needs of other children with, say, sensory needs in our community. For example, a child who has autism. A lot of our typical playgrounds can have barriers for children who have mobility needs, such as walls that go around them or steps or mulch. And we wanted a playground that could be accessible to everyone, but still would be exciting and fun for typical peers.
That means that this park is created with rubber surfaces instead of mulch. The swings have 3 different seat options: a typical seat, a friendship seat, which can be shared, or a molded bucket seat. Same for the zip line. The zip line offers a typical seat or a molded bucket seat. There's a sensory stimulation center, while ramps are offered on all the access points, with more challenging options available, like a rock climbing unit and ladders.
For children who can't get out of their wheelchairs to enter those swings, we have something called a We-Go-Round, which is a ground-level merry-go-round that can be accessible from either sitting, standing, or a wheelchair. And we also have a rocket ship sway fun, which kind of rocks and plays, and kids can use their creative pretend play to pretend they're blasting off into outer space.
This aspect of planning the park was the most fun, but also the most challenging, as there's a great diversity within the community of disabled children.
I think one of the hardest parts about designing this playground was we had so many different groups of individuals that we were trying to represent, right? So it's not just inclusive to a child who needs a wheelchair, but what may be accessible to a child who is in a wheelchair may be less accessible to a child with visual deficits, for example, or the needs of a child with autism were different than those of a child who's a wheelchair user. And so I think one of our biggest challenges in designing this playground was to really try and include pieces for everyone, but also not make things less accessible because we were trying to increase accessibility for another group.
The park is not only looking to increase accessibility for disabled individuals, but also to increase accessibility for able-bodied children to meet with disabled children, to make new friends that experience different challenges in life. With the addition of this new park, Jamie believes it's an opportunity for the community to grow and learn from each other.
When we talk about bringing an inclusive playground, we often get a lot of questions about what's that mean and why do we need this in our community? And people have been really open and super interested in learning about what the needs of maybe a smaller subset of our community are. And it's also been so great for our families who have both typical children and children with extra needs. They're so excited to see this playground come because they finally have a place where they can take all of their children together and they can all have fun. We really hope that this becomes a community meeting spot, a place where maybe support groups or play groups can meet and come together. Both those children who have extra needs, but also our typical children in the community. It's a great way to have conversations with your child about, why is that child using a wheelchair, and how do I act as a good friend to that person when we're playing? So I think it really opens some conversation doors from that avenue as well.
Jamie hopes this opportunity for new friendships happens sooner than later, as the park is set to open in just a few weeks. I'm Haley Taylor, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Rough Draft Diaries.